You know what really pisses me off, guys? The fact that whenever the originals goes on hiatus, we get the biggest cliffhangers possible. Hey guys, it's Cami for the originals, Season 3, Episode 7, Out of the Easy, and holy shit, what an episode this was. I mean, every episode this season has been really crazy, but this episode was insane. I mean, there was barely a second to breathe in this episode. There was so much crazy shit going on here, and I loved every minute of it, of course. Best episode of the season, by far. I have no idea what's going to happen when the show comes back. We will get into that, but let's just get into this episode. There's a lot to talk about, as usual, and it was a Thanksgiving episode, which was really great. I definitely liked seeing this Thanksgiving episode. So we start with Freya. She's asking Elijah where Klaus is, and he says to forget him. He doesn't want anything to do with him, and tells her to try the spell again. And Marcel asks if she has the juice to do an international locator spell, and she says she does. So you can tell right away that Elijah really doesn't want anything to do with Klaus. Klaus and Aurora, meanwhile, are lounging in the bedroom, and she kisses him. He grabs her up roughly, kisses her, then throws her onto the bed, and she smiles. And I was thinking that Klaus would be upset at Aurora for taking Rebecca and what she did with her, but no, it seems like they're still together. And I was wondering if Aurora might have compelled him, but no, we eventually find out what's going on. I'll get into that. Freya chants and pours Elijah's blood onto the map. It doesn't work. Freya says she's cloaked and tells them she has more work to do. And Elijah and Marcel are arguing over priorities. Marcel wants him to handle Davina, but Elijah really wants to look for Rebecca. So they come to agreement. Marcel decides to look for Davina while Elijah looks for Rebecca. And Hayley really wants to kill, and Elijah says soon, she really wants to go after, Aurora, Tristan, and Lucien, and many, and, he says soon and many, and Elijah then goes looking for Klaus, who says he's being loud enough to wake the dead, and he says Rebecca's missing, but Aurora comes out and says not really. Says if they behave, she'll tell them where she is, and Aurora in this episode, badass, I have to say. Whoever's playing her, she is awesome. I loved her in this episode. First of all, I love how Aurora's basically doesn't give a shit what people think of her. She's very much like a Catherine kind of character. She doesn't care what people think about her. She's very much a badass and will do whatever the fuck she wants. And that very much is how she is. I really like it and definitely gives us the Catherine vibe that I really like. So, and that's kind of something the Vampire Diaries is missing and the originals has, which is awesome. So Aurora comes out and says, not really. If they behave, she'll tell them where she is. Elijah demands that she tell them where Rebecca is. And Klaus says that he and Aurora have reached an arrangement. He tells Aurora to go back to bed while he has a word with Elijah. And they basically decided that, them being together, they're going to try to rekindle their relationship. And it's not going to work out. That they're kind of living in the past. And once they're alone, Elijah accused him of fornicating with a she-devil who took their sister. He says Aurora took her from the Strix, and Elijah says that Aurora will protect Tristan, and the three of them will have an advantage, and Elijah is telling the truth here, but Klaus just simply doesn't want to not trust her. Elijah says they have to break that, and Klaus asks what he has in mind. Elijah says that they're going to invite them over for Thanksgiving and turn them against each other, so they toasted that, and I thought that was a very smart plan for them to do. Because they're not really going to think anything of it. They'll just think they want to come to a truce when really they're going to try to get them turning against each other, which is very smart. So Tristan goes to pick up a coffin, and Rebecca's body is not in it, and Aurora is there, and she tells him she has other plans, because, he thought Rebecca was dead, but of course she's not, and she tells him to trust her, but he says she's had time to poison Lucien's witch and bed Klaus, and she says next time to not leave her locked up in a monstrosity. And he asks where Rebecca is, and she says they were keeping their plans from her. And he asks what they are, and he holds up 2 cards from the coffin, and she says they are insurance. And she tells him to trust her and says, put your mind at ease. She walks out, and basically there's a whole Thanksgiving dinner run going on in the quarter, and crowds are all over the place, and it's a really interesting scene what's going on there with, it was definitely interesting what's going on with Aurora. Like I said, you definitely can't trust her, and you can see that right here. So there's a whole, festival going on in New Orleans in the quarter. Crowds are all over. Lucien tells Cami that she looks lovely, then asks what's wrong, and she says that he's holding her hostage and using her minutes, and Lucien mocks her, then says he has to go dine with the Michelsons, and she asks if they're serving his head on a platter. Obviously, she wants nothing to do with him, and she says he can't trick her friends into thinking she's fine, and will track her here. Eventually, they're going to find her. Obviously, she's trapped, and she's saying, look, they're going to find me, and Cami also was awesome in this episode. I really like seeing her here. By the way, Detective Kinney is not even in this episode, which I thought was interesting, but Detective Kinney's not here. So he says, in a few hours she'll be free of Irving. He can compel her. There's a knock, and he basically comes on compelling her. There's a knock, and he says it's the nanny. He introduces her to Anton and says he's dangerous and loyal. And Anton, this guy, was really creepy, I have to say. I mean, honestly, I thought he was pretty creepy. He tells Anton to kill her if he doesn't return by nightfall, and he takes off. So, Davina then meets Marcel, but she's late, and he tells her that there's vampires in town, and she says the ancestors told her about the Strix, and he says that the Strix are looking for her to help take down Klaus, and I like what she says. She basically says no. She says, look, I'm not helping you. I'm going to do what I want. I have my own agenda, and she's not doing this. She's going to do what she wants, and I like seeing that. I mean, you think that she'd want to go after Klaus, but no, she doesn't want to do that. You know, her main priority is not to go after Klaus. Her main priority is to rule this, you know, to be the head witch and to rule the coven and be, you know, the ruler of her coven, and she obviously wants to do that, and she doesn't want anyone else telling her what to do, and I really like seeing that from Davina. It really shows how strong a character she is. I know some people don't like Davina, which I honestly don't understand, especially this season. How can you not like Davina? She really is turning into a strong woman. She's doing what she wants, and I really love that. So Hayley tells Jackson that Hope is down for a nap and she will go and be back for dinner, and that's a very important scene. It's much more important than we think it's going to be, and this is probably the first episode where we actually see some conflict between Hayley and Jackson and her with the Michaelsons. We really started to see this conflict in this episode. She says the Sire Lion losers took Rebecca, and he says let Klaus and Elijah handle this, and she says Rebecca kept Hope safe and can't do anything, and Jackson says to let Klaus deal with the bloodbath dinner and says they don't need her help killing anyone. And he says Thanksgiving dinner, and he does have a point. I mean, this is not her family, even though Klaus is the father of her child, and that's kind of the reason why she's never giving me to get away from them. They're not her family, okay? She's not a Michelson. They can handle this on their own. And she says she hears him, he embraces her, and the run continues, and Lucien pours a drink as Tristan comes in with flowers and says the well-mannered being, they bring a gift for dinner, and Klaus walks in and says Aurora must be on her way. Then she walks in. He smiles at her. She greets Lucien, and he says it's been ages and she looks lovely. But Klaus distracts her from Lucien and kisses her hands. And every scene at the dinner table was just great. Every scene was so awesome in this episode. Elijah comes in, says, welcome to our home. He says they all face a common threat of prophecy. He says he fears his sister has already fallen. And honestly, guys, if I had to say, honestly, guys, I'm going to say this right now. If this entire episode would have been just around this dinner table, I would have been fine with that, because those were some of the best scenes in this episode, were just them sitting around a table and slowly turning against each other. It was awesome to watch, and I loved it. It was one of the best parts of the episode, were all the scenes around this dinner table. Because, again, we know what's going to happen here. We know what their plan is. We don't know if it's going to work out as well as we think it is, but it was very interesting to watch, and I was definitely interested in seeing what was going to happen in this scene. I mean, this really was a scene that was quite unpredictable. The way it goes is not the way you think it's going to go, and I really like that. So he says they all face a common threat of prophecy. He says he fears his sister's already fallen, and he's basically pretended that he's called them all there to find about the whereabouts of Rebecca. And Elijah says they need to unite to prevent the prophecy from happening, and says they need honesty, which is not what they're trying to do. They're not there to unite. They're not there to team up, but that's why he's bringing them there. And obviously, honesty, that will bring out what Aurora's really doing, and that will show Klaus, Lucien and Tristan that they can't trust each other, which I really like. So he says he knows Lucien and Tristan have a clandestine alliance, and Lucien tries to lie, and Klaus says they all accept an honest and productive negotiation. And Elijah says that they will begin, and they take seats, and Elijah nods at Klaus. Vincent sits at the bar when Marcel comes in and takes a chair near him, and Vincent isn't happy to see him, and Marcel says he doesn't care if he doesn't like him, and he tells Vincent that new vampires want Davina on their side and will kill her if she won't cooperate. And this scene between Marcel and Vincent is great, because think about it. Vincent is the one that should be training Davina. He hasn't done any of this, and obviously Marcel's really pissed at her. Is really pissed at him for doing this, and he says he wants her to leave town so she's not killed, and Vincent says there may be a way, but he won't like it. And remember, Vincent doesn't have much magic left, so what he's asking Vincent to do is impossible, but it could work, for all we know. He doesn't have much magic left. So Lucian mentions it's odd celebrating an American holiday like Thanksgiving, and says he likes the turkeys and the lies and deceit, and that's true. I mean, they're not used to celebrating it, and Tristan says he and Lucian have always been enemies, so they were simply maintaining differences. Lucian says they came to protect them and themselves, and Klaus asks about the bodies on the streets, and they tell him it's business as usual with the Strix, and Lucian says when you need an item from a private collection, a police investigation is a good way to get your hands on something. So, as we know, they're looking for that weapon, and we don't know what that weapon is, but we're basically realizing all the police investigation is surrounding that weapon, which is very interesting. So Lucian says that Cami had it, and he got her arrested to get it, but did not allow any harm to come to her, knowing the affection he has for her, and that gets to Aurora, and that really starts to get to Aurora, because Aurora never knew about Cami. He keeps talking about Cami throughout this episode, and this is really, I think, the first episode where we start to see that he really doesn't love Aurora. He clearly loves Cami, and I really like seeing that. So the vampire tells Cami to get him a beer or he'll find another way to quench his thirst, and he sees her looking at her boxes, and he says he can't kill her, but can hurt her, heal her, then do it again, and she says she's got it, and he says have a drink since she's not going anywhere, and Klaus says locking them away with a medallion doesn't seem like protecting them, and Elijah says hand over the medallion and his sister, and Aurora says that Rebecca's safe with her, and Elijah says it can compel them to cooperate, but Aurora giggles and says they would never come vulnerable to that. And Tristan says the sire lines declaring war on each other is troublesome, and says some upstarts want them to come after them, and says them allowing themselves to be sealed up would be a perfect way in a perfect world to protect them all. And Klaus reminds him it's not a perfect world, and Marcel meets, which is true. I mean, that's the definition of the show. Nothing is perfect. So Marcel meets with a frustrated Freya who says she can't find Rebecca. Freya seems like the person that's most interested. I mean, they all want to, but Freya is the one that's, like, not involved with this dinner at all. So she walks out but says she's not giving up, and Vincent meets with Davina, who says that Marcel filled him in on what's going on. She says she's not scared of the Strix, and he flips a skeletal tarot card and says maybe she should be worried. And she says Vincent walked away from being a witch, and she doesn't want to have to be hassled. She says Kara attacked her when he questions her, having witches killed. She says she will take care of any threat that stands against her. She walks out, and then Van is there, and they use a dream catcher to catch a confession to killing Kara, and the other witches are there. And, obviously, she wants to do this on her own. She doesn't want any help from anyone because, obviously, Vincent had the opportunity to help her. He had the opportunity to work with her and, figure out what he wanted to do with her, but he said no. He decided not to work with her, and as a result, then they're not going to, she's not going to work with him now. There's no way she's going to work with him now after everything that's happened. There's no way. He had the opportunity. He walked away. I agree with her. She should not work with him because he walked away. She should have to say, I like that she's saying no. I like that she's telling him, no, I don't want to work with you. I'm not going to just work with you because you're forcing me to. I'm going to do what I want to do, and it really shows how much Davina has changed. I mean, Season 1 Davina would have been able to do none of this on her own. None of this. And now she can do pretty much all of it, and I love that. I love that she can do things on her own. I think it's really great that we're seeing this side of Davina, and again, it really shows how much she's grown as a character, and I'm definitely really loving it, I have to say. Really, really great stuff there. So, Davina, by far, is having one of the strongest arcs of this season. Everyone's having a strong arc, but Davina particularly, I think this is probably Davina's strongest season. So, we then see that they use a dream catcher to catch her confession of killing Kara, and the other witches are there, and obviously now they know that she killed Kara. They didn't know she did, but now they know that she did, and obviously things are getting really bad for her. Which isn't her fault. She didn't know they were ganging up on her. That's not her fault. But Klaus tells Elijah he's certain that Aurora will oblige them with bringing back Rebecca. Freya comes in mad, and Aurora says they're all being paranoid, and she says she can't trust Rebecca with them, so she can pull her someplace safe where no harm can come to her, and she can't be tracked down. She says she put Rebecca at the bottom of the ocean, and then smiles wickedly. So yes, now we realize that Rebecca is at the bottom of the ocean, and the other Michelsons are all stunned and not too happy. They thought that she had her safe, but no, Aurora, she literally put her at the bottom of the ocean. Out of all places that Rebecca could have gone, the bottom of the ocean is where Aurora put her, and that's just insane, the fact that she did that. You can see how pissed they are at her. They want nothing to do with her, and that's understandable. I mean, after doing something like that, how can you possibly forgive her? I mean, it's insane what she did. And I love how Freya came in there being a badass, and I love the line where Klaus just like, Freya, how could you? I thought that was just hilarious. So Klaus says she's bluffing. He doesn't want to believe that Aurora is telling the truth. Like I said, Klaus, I think, does genuinely still care for Aurora, and he doesn't want to believe that she's bad, which she is. She's bad news, but he just doesn't want to believe it. And Aurora says that Rebecca has never been safer and has plenty of company. He goes for her, but Tristan goes for Freya, then Elijah attacks him, and Lucien smarts off, and he says if he dies, Cami will be at risk, and Aurora asks who Cami is, and then Freya snaps and knocks her out with magic, and that was awesome when Freya did that. That was just, I love that. So Elijah calls Lucien and Tristan vulgar parasites, and Klaus says Elijah can take the stable boy, and then Klaus whispers to Lucien that if anything happens to Cami, and then Elijah says that Lucien likely realized his error, that he shouldn't have to worry about it, that Lucien knows he did something wrong, and Klaus shouldn't have to worry. I'm not so sure about that, though. I mean, he clearly is holding Cami with an assassin, this assassin that could kill her at any point, and obviously that's really bad what he's doing. So, Vincent tells Davina that if you kill a witch, you will lose your place and must be stunned, and must be shunned, and that's obviously a problem for her. I mean, she is, but the thing is, this is actually a good thing for Davina, because remember, she really doesn't know how to handle all this, and I like that Vincent is telling her that she's going to lose her place, and I don't think he realizes that she kind of wants this, because it's just going to give her a better advantage. You know, she'll be safer, she'll feel safer, she'll feel better here. I mean, it'll just be a better, it'll just be better for her overall, you know. I think it's just a better idea for her to be, you know, to not be the head witch than to be the head witch, because, like I said, she clearly doesn't, fully know what she's doing, and Klaus tells Tristan that he will tell Aurora to return Rebecca, and Klaus says Aurora can watch him tear limb from limb. Tristan threatens him with the Strix, and I honestly thought that Tristan was going to ask Klaus to join the Strix, but Klaus then comes at him, and Tristan says there's a better solution to the prophecy and can take control of fate. He says seal his siblings for a year, and Klaus can stay on guard over them for a year, and he says it's his only choice. So basically, he's telling him, look, you have this opportunity to, if you protect your siblings, we can work with you, and then you can, you know, possibly work with us. Now, I knew that Klaus, there was no way he's going to take this offer. I mean, why would Klaus want to join the Strix? It would not happen. It's not in his character. There's no way he'd do that. So Elijah takes Lucien into another room. He says he was horrified by Aurora's actions, and Elijah demands Cami and the medallion if he wants to keep his head, and Lucien says he wanted to stop the prophecy to save himself, and Elijah says that Lucien could be the author of the prophecy, and he says Elijah gives him too much credit, and he says the rift between Klaus and Elijah is huge, and Aurora just makes it worse. So what's interesting here is I don't know if Lucien's being sincere. I really don't. I don't know if he's just, this is part of the plan. I don't know if Lucien is actually sincere and, like, he genuinely cares for them. I'm really not sure what his real agenda is here. What I do know is that he definitely is not to be trusted. I don't trust Lucien, definitely. So he basically, Elijah says that Klaus will always choose family, and Lucien asks why Klaus isn't pushing Aurora away for driving back in the ocean, which is true. I mean, you would think that Klaus would be really upset at Aurora, but he's just not. He's not mad at her, and it's because he clearly is still in love with her, and that's a good thing, but I kind of feel like, in a way, Lucien is just trying to antagonize, make Klaus look like a bad person in front of Elijah, and just give Elijah reasons why he shouldn't trust his brother, and I feel like that's still part of his plan. So I really don't trust Lucien. Even though they're trying to show that maybe Lucien can be trusted, I really don't trust him. I mean, what he's saying to Elijah just doesn't sound reasonable. It doesn't sound true. It sounds like he's trying to turn Elijah against his brother, and I just don't trust him for that. So Aurora wakes, and Freya says no one can hear what happens to her. Then Hayley is there, and Aurora says she was hoping to meet the mother of Klaus's child. And Hayley says she's going to tell them where to find Rebecca or they're going to kill her. And by the way, Aurora meets, like, everyone in this episode, which I love seeing. So she smirks, and Vincent reads the shunning order. Now, I honestly thought that Hayley was going to kill Aurora in this episode, which I'm happy she didn't, because I really like Aurora as a villain. She's a very good villain, and is honestly probably going to be the main villain of this season. I mean, just the way things are going, she seems like she is a lot more in tune with things than Tristan and Lucien are. So Vincent reads the shunning order and says her regent title is revoked and she may not contact the ancestors. He says it will be as if she never was born, and the other witches chant. He tells her he's sorry and says it's time to go. She walks down the streets of the crypt and through the cemetery. They all turn their back on her, and she feels herself disconnecting from the witches of Nola, and I don't really know what Davina's gonna do. I mean, this seemed like it was a good thing for her, but now it's a really bad thing because everyone's turned their back on her. So she's no longer a witch. I mean, she's a witch. She still has the powers, but they're not gonna treat her like one. They're gonna treat her like she doesn't exist. So really, what is she gonna do? The only person I think that's going to be able to help her is Freya or Hayley, especially Hayley. Hayley was the one that had that tight bond with Davina. She should have probably called her up, but I feel like in this point, Davina just doesn't really know what to do. I mean, how do you move on from something like this? After being defeated like that, I don't really see how you can move on from something like that, and I really felt bad for Davina in this scene, I have to say. So, Hayley beats on Aurora, says she's strong enough for an infant, and Freya knocks her back with magic, and she says that hurts. She hasn't felt pain since the 1700s. Hayley threatens to bite her, and Aurora says that Klaus will heal her, and Freya says to bite her brother instead, but Aurora says they need Tristan to get Rebecca back, and Tristan tells Klaus that Aurora has no loyalty to Klaus, and Klaus says if he daggered his brother, that would fulfill the prophecy. And Tristan says they know he's daggered his siblings before, and Klaus says it's blood to suggest he betray his own blood, then threatens to kill him just right then, right now. And I was wondering if he was really going to do it, and Aurora tells Hayley and Freya that she doesn't know where Rebecca is dropped. She says she killed the men who dropped her, that she then had the location information split in two, and she only knows half, and Tristan knows the other. So Aurora smirks at them, and you can tell that she is lying. She's not telling the truth here. She clearly isn't saying everything that's going on, and they are all back at the table. Klaus says he doubted Elijah's wisdom and bring them all together. He says he realizes they must make difficult choices to ensure their collective survival, and he says his choice will be the right one. He goes to stand by Elijah, attacks Tristan. He tells Aurora she shattered their love when she took his sister, and he says that Tristan will die very slowly and painfully, a sibling for a sibling. He says give his sister back, and Aurora then storms out, and that was crazy when that happened. Really a crazy scene there. So Klaus tells Lucien he will take him to Cami, hand over the medallion, or he will give him such a painful end the devils will weep, and Cami tells Anton that the chances of Lucien coming back are slim. She tells him that Klaus is the most ruthless vampire in all of history, and he kind of likes her, and she says Anton should be the one worried about making it through the night. She's pretending to be drunk, then when he comes over to her, she hits him with a bottle, cuts off the finger with his daylight ring, and that was insane when she did that. She literally cuts off his finger, and she runs out the door. He can't fall because of the sun. She calls the elevator, doors open, Aurora's there. She smiles at Cami wickedly and says, you must be Cami, and I had no idea what Aurora was going to do. You know she's going to do something to make Klaus upset. You know that she clearly is not working with Klaus, and you know that there's something she's about to do. You just don't know what it is, and I love that. That feeling of uncertainty. That's something that makes this show so intense. So at Lucien's place, Klaus beats Anton, destroys the place. Anton says she took his daylight ring and left. Klaus stakes him, tells Lucien this is his fault, and it really is. I mean, Lucien was the one that hired the guy, and Lucien says it's his fault for not doing as he says. He tells Klaus he's trying to keep him alive, and he shows him the medallion, says his efforts are to keep him alive. Klaus asks why he handed over. Lucien says it's a sign of loyalty since Tristan obviously can be trusted, and his true loyalty lies with Aurora, and he tells Klaus to take it, and he does, which is true. But honestly, Aurora's kind of a step ahead of him at this point. Honestly, Aurora seems like she's doing most of the work while Tristan's kind of sitting back. That's really what it seems like to me, that Aurora has her own plan. Tristan kind of doesn't really know what's going on, which I like. So Vincent sits sulking by a window. He obviously feels really upset because I feel like Vincent feels like he could have helped Davina. He could have helped her go through this. He could have trained her to know what she was, show her what she was prepared for. She obviously wasn't prepared, and he's obviously very upset about it. And I really felt bad from that scene, I have to say. So Marcel comes up to him. They agree that she's alive, and that's what's important. And even though she's no longer a witch and she's no longer part of the coven, she's still alive. And Vincent says they have to keep telling themselves that. Really sad. Klaus comes to Cami's place calling for her. He tries to call her and then gets voicemail. He says he needs to know she's safe and asks her to call him back. And Cami is in the trunk of the car with 2 bite marks on her neck. And Aurora laughs and closes the trunk. So, is Cami gonna be a vamp now? I mean, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, if Aurora bit her, wouldn't she be a vampire? I mean, that's probably what would happen to her. I can't imagine why not, but that would make perfect sense if Cami's a vampire, because obviously Klaus wouldn't want that. He wouldn't want that to happen to her, and now if Cami really is going to be a vampire, Aurora really is an awesome villain. Honestly, the way Aurora's going, she has potential to top Dahlia. She really does. The way she's going here, I honestly think Aurora has potential to top Dahlia. So Hayley comes home, finds dinner cold and Hope in bed, and Jackson is really annoyed. And honestly, I understood what Jackson's saying, that the family needed her help. He says he asked her to just leave it be, and she says she couldn't do it. And Jackson says no matter what Klaus does to her, him or the pack, she will always answer his call. And he has a backpack and says he's going to the bayou to be with his family. So, I honestly, I understand what Jackson's saying here. I understand what his problem is. I mean, he told her specifically, I want you to have a dinner with your family. This is her family. The Michelsons are not her family. And despite all the shit that they've been through, she, for whatever reason, still wants to work with them. And let's face it, they haven't been the nicest to her. Out of anyone that shouldn't be working with the Michelsons, it should be Hayley. I'm not saying that, what they did was wrong to Hayley. Honestly, what Klaus did, some of the stuff was very justified, like him turning Hayley into a wolf. Obviously, like I said, that was him trying to protect her in his own way. But I get what Jackson's saying. If they don't really trust you and they don't really want to work with you, why the fuck are you working with them? And why would you blow off your family, that cares about you and loves you? Because Jackson, we know, loves her. He cares about her. He loves her. He'll love her till the day he dies. And she knows that. But the thing is, despite all of that, she, for whatever reason, decides to do all this shit. And he doesn't know why. And she takes his hand and he pulls her hand off him and goes. And I don't know if this is the end of Jackson. I hope it's not, because I honestly really do like Jackson. I know a lot of you don't like Jackson, but I think they're handling it really well. I can understand what Jackson's going through. I can understand where he's coming from, and I feel bad for him, really. I don't feel bad for Hayley because she could have easily stayed there. She didn't need to help out the Michelsons. I understand she's attached to them, but she didn't need to help them. She really didn't. She could have taken the night off, but she didn't. So Klaus, and granted, he doesn't really know their situation. Jackson doesn't really know what they're going through, so there is that. But, again, I do feel bad for him with that. So Klaus calls Elijah, tells him he hasn't found Cami yet, but will. Elijah asks Klaus if he loves Aurora, and Klaus says it's not the point because they have this prophecy under control. And Elijah says perhaps then notices the messy Thanksgiving table looks like what he saw when he bit the witch, and it looks like they fulfilled the prophecy instead of ending it, and that's how the episode ends. So basically, they are 2 steps ahead of them. It really seems like Aurora, Tristan, and Lucien are not to be trusted at all. I think this proves it. This proves that what Lucien was saying was bullshit, and all this time they were playing him. However, like I said, I really feel like Aurora has the upper hand here. I mean, she was the one to, put Rebecca under the spell. She was the one to bite Cami. I mean, she was the one to, put her back into stasis. She was the one to bite Cami. What else can she do? It really seems like she's the one doing all the, calling all the shots here. Tristan and Lucien are calling all the shots, but Aurora's doing all the dirty work, and it's very interesting the way that's going. And I definitely really like seeing that, I have to say. They're really doing a good job with showing how menacing they really are. But let's talk about Cami. Is Cami going to be a vampire? Like I said, this is the one thing that Klaus would never want to happen. And this is the one thing that that Klaus would be really upset about if it did happen. So is she going to be a vampire? I'm not really sure. I hope she's not, because obviously that'd be really sad if she was, but if that's really what Aurora wants to do, that is a very well thought out plan, and Klaus really needs to rethink his loyalties, because he should not trust Aurora whatsoever, and I don't think Klaus really sees that. What's gonna happen now that this prophecy has started? I don't really know what they're gonna do here, but this is going to be very interesting to see really what their whole plan is, because let's face it, we don't really know what their entire plan is here. They don't really know yet, and I like that. I like that we're still kind of unaware of their plan. I like the way they handled it, and definitely really good stuff there. I'm definitely really enjoying these 3 villains, I have to say. I think they're definitely really menacing, and they're doing a very good job developing them. However, the character I felt the most bad for was Davina. I really felt bad for her. I mean, all she wanted to do was have some help. All she needed was help from Vincent, and he could have helped her, and Vincent knows that he was wrong with that. And I really think that Vincent needs to stop brooding, though. I do agree with Marcel. At least she's okay. What's done is done. He decided not to help her. That's over. Her being part of, her being the leader of her coven is over, and he just needs to face that. And even though Vincent doesn't really seem like he needs to face that, he needs to, because that's just how it is now, and he really needs to understand that she's no longer this, she even says she's no longer some teenager. She's older. She can make her own decisions, and he needs to understand that. And I get that she's, like, only supposed to be, like, 17 or 18 years old, but she can make her own decisions. So, Hayley, is Jackson gone for good? Is Jackson gone for good? I'm not sure. I felt really bad for Hayley. I really I understand what Hayley is doing. I do understand that she wants to help him out, obviously. But Jackson doesn't understand her situation, and she just should have been more honest with him. She should have told him what she's doing. She should have told him the situation. I get that he really doesn't trust Klaus right now. I get that he really wants nothing to do with Klaus. I completely understand that. But he could have easily, maybe not, I think he could have probably handled this a bit differently than he essentially did. I'm not saying that he, did something wrong, but I do think that Hayley could have probably told her something that she didn't, and that's going to be really bad for her, definitely. I really feel bad for her in this episode. Rebecca's in the middle of the ocean. Holy shit, what's going to happen with that? Let's talk about this whole situation with the medallion. What's going to happen with the medallion? Obviously, it's very powerful. They've now started this prophecy. What does it mean? We'll have to see. We don't know what this prophecy is going to be. And now we have to wait 2 weeks, of course, because next week is Thanksgiving. Obviously, it's not going to be on next week, but it really sucks because they always do the best cliffhangers when it's not, when there's going to be a break. And it really sucks because you guys know how much I love this show, and I don't want to wait a week, especially after an episode like this. I definitely don't want to wait a week. I don't want to wait a week after an episode like this, but unfortunately I have to. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode. I thought this episode was absolutely incredible. I loved it. By far best episode of the season. Such a crazy episode. So much great stuff in this one. And I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for the Man in the High Castle, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.